Compost is the process of taking material that the plant cannot absorb and turning it into material that the plant can absorb. So that what we do is we take grass, we take food waste, we take any type of organic material and we put it in a pile, and we let the bacteria and the fungus and all the little insects break it down, so it becomes in a way now that the plant can take it up as its food. We compost because a lot of people take their organic waste, it's like their food waste and their leaves, and they just put it in the garbage and they send it away to the dump. But that is valuable resources that if you turn it into compost, you can save money instead of having to buy expensive fertilizers. When you're making a compost pile, you have to have green material and you have to have brown material. The green material is any material that if you leave it, it starts smelling. So it's a lot of your green waste, or sometimes chicken manure or horse manure or pig manure, but not dog and cat manure. Any of those manures, if you leave them in a pile, they start smelling. That is what we call green material. That has lots of nitrogen in it. When you make your compost pile, you have to mix your green material with brown material. Brown material is any material that if you leave, it has no smell to it. So dry leaves, cardboard, shredded paper, dry grass, any of those materials are brown materials. So that is the material that you normally put in your compost pile. If you're just starting to compost, then we recommend that you don't put things like oil, you don't put things like meat, and you don't put things like bones into your compost. When we build a compost pile, the first layer that we start with is rough material. So it can be sticks, twigs, palm branches. And the reason we use that at the bottom is so that oxygen can come up through the compost pile. Otherwise, if you put your compost without doing that straight on the floor, then you can't get oxygen coming in from underneath. The next layer that we put is grass, dry grass or dry leaves, and that is the brown material or the material that's high in carbon. And that helps to absorb a lot of the smells, so that the next layer after that is the green material or your kitchen waste or your animal manure. And then again, we cover that with more brown material, so that that material that could smell is now covered and it doesn't attract flies. And then we repeat that process over and over again until we get 3 or 4 layers, and then your compost pile is complete. One of the most important things you need to follow when you're making your compost pile is that every 2 or 3 days you have to check it to make sure that it's wet. It doesn't have to be soggy, it just has to be moist, because the moisture keeps the bacteria alive and they will break down your compost. So if you let your compost pile dry, you can come back after 2 or 3 months and nothing's happened in it. But if you keep checking on it every 2 days and making sure it's wet, it'll break down very quickly. We also turn a compost pile every 2 or 3 weeks, and that is to allow oxygen to get in, because if you don't allow oxygen to get in, then the compost pile will start smelling. When we make a compost pile, we cover it with brown material, and then when we finish making the compost pile, we cover it with either a tarpaulin or some cardboard or a piece of shade cloth, and that prevents some pests from coming in it. If you're in an area where there are a lot of rats, then it's advisable that you make your compost in something like a barrel, or you put some wire mesh around it so that the rats can't get into the compost. The difference between composting and rotting is that when you let stuff rot, there's no control of what happens to that material. It will eventually turn into compost, but when you do the compost process, you take the correct amount of green material and you take the correct amount of brown material and you get the right amount of oxygen and the right amount of moisture, and it makes the process much quicker, and the compost that you get at the end of it is sometimes more nutritious, as well as you don't attract flies and you don't get smells coming out from it. In my hand is completed compost. As you can see, it's crumbly, it looks like good soil, it has no smell. And if you look to my right over here, this is what it would have started as: leaves, grass, paper, and kitchen waste. All of this, as it breaks down with bacteria and fungus working on it, it turns into this material over here, which is good, finished, completed compost.